Okay, members, let's call the meeting of the Capitol Security Council to order for the November 14th, Monday, November 14th meeting, and have Secretary call the roll.
Senator Cortez
Here.
Is present. Representative Shake Snyder
Here.
Is present. Senator Boudreaux
Present.
Is present. Senator Toluno
Here.
Is present. Senator Milligan
Here.
Present. Senator Mizell
Here.
Is present. Representative Selders
Here.
Is here. Representative Stagney
Here.
Is present. Representative Stefanski
Present.
is present. Representative Villio
Here.
Is present. I have 10 members.
Very good. 10 members and a quorum. Approval of the minutes of the October 18th meeting. Speaker moves approval. Seeing no objection, the minutes have been approved. Okay, members, item 4 is the discussion of the candidates for the position of Capitol Security Director. As you recall from the last meeting, the first step this committee has to take is to hire a Capitol Security Director. And the first step in that process is taking applicants, which we did. We received 11 applicants, and I've been notified by staff today that as of Friday, one of the 11 applicants has asked to withdraw from the process. Mr. DeVille, do you want to give us the list? Person who withdrew, and then the final applicants that are still. Check your folders for your resumes, and you may want to remove this one.
Yes. Okay. So we started with 11 applicants, as the president just mentioned. On Friday, I received an email from J.D. Leach that he wished to withdraw his application. So there are 10 remaining, and that's going to be in alphabetical order. Terry Ilario Jr., Timothy Atkins, Daniel Blackdeer, Elijah Davis, T.J. Goff, Byron Hatch, Rodney Hyatt, Darren Paul Lockett, Frederick Thomas, and Stephon Lewis.
Okay, very good. And members, you received all of these resumes at the last meeting. You should have had time to look over all of those. You can remove J.D. Leach from that packet. And at this point, what I'd like to do is open it up for discussion relative to those resumes. And the next step will be the interview process. From a personal perspective, I always believe that the interview process is certainly a very important process where you can really drill down on the expectations you have. And so what we're doing today is giving our feedback on the actual resumes, the written resumes. So I don't know, but it's my understanding that I don't believe anybody on the committee has, you may have met some of them, but you've not done any personal interview with anybody that's applied as far as I am aware. So at this time, we'll open it up for comments with regards to the resumes. First up, okay, Senator Mizell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just going to share my first impression, and I think if we have the opportunity to have input, the primary attribute that, frankly, that I was looking for was someone who could bring a team effort in providing security to the legislature, and maybe that's not what other people approach this with, but I wanted to see someone that had strengths to do that. And frankly, when I looked at Daniel Blackdeer's resume, I was impressed with the situational experience. I don't think that's something that's easy to come by. I was impressed with that. His ability to bring about the team coordination that was mentioned throughout his resume. So those were my first impressions. Frankly, I was a little concerned with him being from Wisconsin. If his wife's job, I think she's with the fire department or some public sector job, whether that was going to be an issue for him. So I would just like to bring that out for discussion.
Any other comments on any of the other applicants, or is that you're limited? Senator Mizell, you finished?
Oh, I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Stefanski?
Yeah, Mr. President, I just have a point of clarification. I see that he's not post-certified. According to the statute, Matt, do they just have to be post-certified by the time they're employed, or is that something that would stop us from considering that person according to the statute, or is it just something that is a requirement upon employment?
My understanding is that it would be required upon employment, but
Okay.
he would not really amount from being considered.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Senator Milligan?
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, going through these resumes and our previous meetings, you know, we're looking for someone that's got the law enforcement background, supervisory experience. We're also looking for someone who can work with government personnel. But we're also looking for someone who can bring us into the modern era and being able to identify the threats, the modern threats, be able to create security protocols to meet that modern day threat and putting a team in place. And so I had begun that search through all the resumes, and the name that came to forefront that checked all those boxes was Mr. Lario. And I just wanted to put his name out there as far as checking those boxes from the way I could see it.
Okay. Other comments? Okay. There are no other comments at this time. I'm going to go through a couple of the things and the attributes, kind of coattailing Senator Mizell with some of the attributes that I think are important. I said this earlier, and I'll repeat it. I'm not sure that you can really know how good someone is as a communicator without being able to ask them their experience of being able to communicate to different agencies and different offices. I'm not sure how well you can determine if someone's a good leader until you have an opportunity to ask them, give me examples of your leadership style and when you've been called on to lead a group or a force. I'm not so sure that you can determine how a person can work within the confines of buildings that are filled with politics, where you have statewide elected officials that don't have to respond to the legislature necessarily, but they have their staff that works in this building and in other buildings, and you have the responsibility for the safety of this building is held to the legislature. Until you understand how they're going to be able to communicate with those different agencies, the different staffs, and then to take it a step further, we call this the people's house. When a local sheriffs choose to come here during a session, they are elected officials too. How do you deal with them if you decide that the protocol is you're not going to bring your weapon into the building, whether it's a local city marshal or a city chief of police? These are all things that you have to have, I believe, somebody with a disposition that understands those nuances and understands that that you're going to have to make difficult decisions and you're going to have to train your force. And I don't know how we do that just looking at a piece of paper with ink on it. That being said, as I look through it, and I'm going to mention a few names, I know that, and I'm kind of taking these a little bit just kind of no particular order. The Ilario was certainly one that I saw has had some of that. I believe in the historically has had to deal with some of that. Black Deer was also another one, Senator Mizell, that I saw that had, it appears on paper, the qualifications to have that communication. And then it looks to me like Rodney Hyatt, who of all the people on here is the only one that I've known, because I know he worked in the Capitol years ago in a for the state police. He was in and out of the Capitol. So that's the the three candidates that had something in their resumes that jumped off that at least spoke to me on the ability to understand the nuances and to also be able to communicate effectively with elected officials from throughout the state and their staffs. Okay, Senator Boudreaux.
Yeah, Mr. President, I'd also ask for us to take a look at Mr. Frederick Thomas, and I guess his, as you were going through some of those characteristics and traits, in his cover letter to you, his final paragraph pretty much summarizes what I thought would make him a viable candidate, in that his diverse leadership and background in public safety, law enforcement, emergency preparation, and military operations, combined with his strong business acumen and ability to accomplish organizations' goals, provided, and I'm quoting him, provided him with the expertise to hit the ground running, and he was looking forward to the opportunity for an interview. So when you go through, his background with the Department of Homeland Security and what he's been able to do and the diversity that he's experienced, I think, a Master's of Science in Criminal Justice and so many other traits, I think he would fit the mold of at least giving us an opportunity to sit down with him and explore the total package, not only in writing but in person. So I would offer up Mr. Frederick Thomas to that category as well.
Okay. Senator, is that it, Senator Boudreaux? Okay, Senator Luno.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I too believe that the interview process is going to be the most important part of this, but we have to make some decisions if we're going to interview everybody or some of these. And kind of ironically, the 4 or 5 that I was considering have been mentioned. Mr. Blackdeer, Mr. Lario, Mr. Hyatt, Mr. Thomas have all been mentioned. But I do believe that interview process where we dig down into this deeper is what's going to turn the tide on this. It is important for us to have somebody with a diverse background, and that's something that we really need to concentrate on. But until we ask those questions, I don't think we know. So I just want to give my concurrence in these 4 that have been mentioned, and I think all 4 of those deserve a second look.
Okay, very good. Representative Villio, or do you have any comment?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I concur. Originally, Mr. Leach was in my group. Now that he's withdrawn, the names that stand out to me for interview would be Mr. Hyatt, Mr. Thomas, and I would also add Mr. Lewis to the group.
Okay, so Mr. Stephen Lewis, that was not one that was previously mentioned?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. Representative Stefanski.
Yeah, I'm echoing a lot of Representative Villio's comments. The one that Ms. Villio just named, Mr. Lewis, would be one that we hadn't discussed as well. I just think so much of this position is going to be the relationship with the legislature in and around, especially the Capitol, and I believe he has the experience with that. So I'd like to see him get an interview as well.
Okay, very good. Anything, Representative Stagney?
No, I was impressed. I thought Mr. Hyatt's application, for me, was far and away his length and breadth of experience. I like that he gave us something with the threat and risk analysis. I don't know that I would have put the budgetary stuff to that. I don't know that we all agree with that. But I thought he was an excellent candidate. I'm disappointed that Mr. Leach withdrew. I thought his experience, not only in law enforcement, but his communication skills would have been outstanding. So Rodney Hyatt, Fred Thomas, and if I have to put someone in the top 3 that I didn't have there, I'd probably put Elijah Davis as well.
Okay, so Davis is one that has not been mentioned yet, so that's a new name.
Yeah. And I'd also just like to say that, a lot of these resumes were really, really good, but I hope when we interview, we don't bring 10 applicants in. That's going to take a very long time. I'm hoping we limit it to somewhere around 3, maybe a max of 5. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, and look, I echo a lot of y'all's same comments on all of these applicants. I think all of them had something to bring to the table, but I think when you're looking at coming in and creating a whole new department, right? We're starting from the ground up. And when you look at a lot of the things that we've all said, having a relationship with the legislature, being able to communicate with families, being able to communicate with outside agencies, whether it be sheriff's offices, police departments, FBI, whoever it may be, whatever situation that happens, creating budgets, creating equipment list. I mean, these things get really technical when you start to look at those things. And I think all of them have something that is applicable to it. The only one that I see that stands out more than anybody's is Rodney Hyatt. I believe somebody who can come in and hit the ground running, to be able to ask those questions and look at, what an active shooter response is right off the bat. What security weaknesses that we have here in the Capitol that can come in and evaluate those things from right off of get-go. Not only just here at the Capitol, but also at our barracks, where we do have a lot of activity during the day. That I think it takes somebody to be able to come in and be able to not only look at himself, but to hire people that can actively do that. So I echo that. The other one I do echo is Mr. Davis as well. He was one of them that I looked at that had the qualifications that I thought, but that's the ones that I would put forth right now. So,
okay, very good, Representative Selders.
Thank you. A lot of things that I've been noticing, and I pay close attention to, the local guys. Right. For me, it'll be hard, and this is about relationship building, being able to work with everybody across the board, and in our state. So I think that's why I probably did not lean towards Mr. Blackdeer, just to be honest, but the local guys like Frederick Thomas, Stephen Lewis, because he's been here, he knows us, he knows the people that's going to come and how to deal with this. Definitely leaning towards Mr. Rodney. He's been, for us being here before and being a former trooper. But when I look at Mr. Frederick, I look at everything in his resume says leadership. Everything he does in here in the community is leadership. And I think that's what we need to bring here to the Capitol, more leadership. We have great leadership, but, it's about working well with others. And these are the top 3 people that I chose.
Okay. Is that it, Representative Sellers?
It.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any other comments? Okay, just one little bit of housekeeping, just to be clear. Whoever we hire has to clear a background check, and so we're not sure that we would be able to get that background check completed, but we put ourselves on a time schedule to do interviews on Thursday of this week. I know you all mentioned Mr. Blackdeer, who is from Wisconsin, and so that, if the committee were to decide that that was going to be one we were going to interview, that also we'd have to take into account travel schedules and so forth. And so, yes, Senator Mizell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we finish our comments, I think it's really important, as you and I have talked about earlier, we're doing something that's never been done. The tone we set in who we put in this position is more than checking the boxes. It's somebody that's got to be, to me, squeaky clean. And I just hope we keep that in mind, because, some of these people, I don't know any of them. But I think in our due diligence, we need to find out everything that's going to be said, the comments that are going to be made, because they're going to reflect on the integrity of this group. So I would just ask that we keep that in mind.
That's a great point. Okay, at this time, the names that I have heard mentioned were in no particular order. I guess I wrote them down as they were mentioned: Blackdeer, Alario, Hyatt, Thomas, Lewis, and Davis. Have I missed anything? Did anybody mention someone that I did not get the name down? Okay, that's 6 of the 10 applicants. What I'd like to do at this time is to entertain a motion. Entertain a motion to move into executive session to discuss maybe a little more in detail some of the resumes that that we may not have discussed. Okay, Representative Villio moves that we move into executive session. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, we'll move into executive session. Okay, members, Speaker Scheck-Snyder makes a motion that we move out of executive session and into regular session. Any objections? Seeing no objection, we are now back in the regular session. Okay. It appears that, as I mentioned earlier, the first step in the process was applications. To recap, we had 11 applications. 1 was removed, withdrawn today, brought us down to 10. We had some open discussion about the 10 resumes that we were able to preview. And what we would like to do at this point is to have staff reach out to the following 4 applicants to schedule interviews, and those would be Terry Alario, Rodney Hyatt, Frederick Thomas, and Stephen Lewis. So 4 applicants, and I'll repeat them. That's Terry Alario, Rodney Hyatt, Frederick Thomas, and Stephen Lewis. Okay, are there any other comments, discussions relative to the candidates at this time? Do we have a time scheduled for the Thursday? Are we going to give staff the opportunity to contact the applicants to make sure that we can have a time that's coordinated? What I would like to do, I think the preference, we initially said that the preference, I think, but at that time we didn't know who the applicants would be. I think our high priority is to make sure that all 4 of them can get here, and don't have a conflict. And that, so if we could somehow work with the applicants to ensure, what I would like to do is establish it for a 2 p.m. meeting and maybe stagger them at 20-minute intervals. Is that enough time, do you think? 20? So you suggesting more time for each one? Okay. Yeah.
If we go over, they may have to wait a little while.
Okay, so then I would say 15 to 20 minutes intervals, but I suspect they would all be there. We could take someone out of order if we needed to, if they arrived early and the other didn't. So my suspicion would be that we would be an hour and a half meeting to get all of the interview questions. What I would ask at this time is for you all as members of the committee to start to jot down some of those questions that you would like asked. We can put those in a general format where we get all of those questions answered by each of the candidates, or we can just go and let you all ask. I think there'll be an opportunity for each of you to ask all of the candidates specific drill down questions after maybe the initial opening comments and then the initial questions that we think we need to get asked. Okay, any other comments? Okay, so just be on the lookout. As of now, we will have staff schedule it for 2 p.m. unless there's some conflict with the applicant that we may need to move it. I wouldn't suggest we would move it much, maybe an hour earlier or an hour later if the schedule in the Capitol would allow for. Okay, any other business, any other matters to come before the committee?
What time is the meeting Thursday?
As of now, we're going to schedule it for 2 unless it were to change up or back just a few minutes. But I think 2 is going to be good. All right, no other questions? And Speaker moves that we stand adjourned.